This MC transformation literally goes from 0 to 100 and ending up living the dream. Stay till the end for my honest take. This story kicks off by revealing that in just 10 years, the Eastern Federation Kingdom is destined to crumble under the weight of the 5 great sins, leading to total destruction with nothing left behind. To stop this catastrophe, our main character has taken on the role of their patron, but he never anticipated it would spiral into such a huge ordeal. Initially, he was just a regular guy, slogging through 78-hour work weeks in the modern world, but somehow he ends up inhabiting a noble in a fantasy realm. While that sounds great, he quickly realizes he's illiterate and lacks any special powers. He figures he should at least know the language, which leaves the butler dumbfounded when he sees our guy holding a book upside down. At mealtime, the maids serve him a massive feast, and he digs in, relishing his new life. They even assist him with his bath, and he can't help but think that being a young master of the Count's family is fantastic. He gets to be pampered and useless, and he feels like he's on cloud 9. But there's a catch. He has no clue where he is. Usually when someone takes over a character in a fantasy world, it's from a book or a game they've played. One of the maids mentions that his brothers, young Master Leo and Tonio, will be back tomorrow, so he should get some rest. Our MC is puzzled by this, and the maid is a bit surprised that he can't even recall his own family. As he starts to piece things together, those names ring a bell. Suddenly it dawns on him. He's in the world of Psychedelia. Psychedelia is a turn-based RPG that our MC used to play whenever he had a spare moment. But here's the kicker. No matter what path you choose in the game, the moment the 5 great sins wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession show up, you're basically fucked. The kingdom's nobility and the entire city starts to spiral into chaos. And the Palacio house where our MC finds himself is a notorious noble family that plays a part in the subquest before the main story kicks off. The eldest son, Leo Palacio, is essentially the king of prostitutes, while the second son, Tonio, is the king of drugs. He drops to his knees as it dawns on him just how well he knows this place. It was the first subquest in the game. Looking around, he sees that the main house looks exactly like it did in the game. The Palacios are the first to be devastated by the 5 great sins, and he's the extra villain. The third son of the Palacio household, Alan Palacio. I love how expressionless his face is. He just found out he's going to die soon, and all he can think about is how much experience points he got from that subquest. As he lies down in bed, he's terrified to even sleep. He thinks about how he'd rather go back to being a wage slave working 78 hours a week, because this new luxurious life of his is set to end in exactly 10 years. To him, that's worse than 6 months of unpaid wages. He can't believe he's stuck in a fantasy world as a character with no powers. Pretty much the opposite of what most people get when they're reincarnated. But then an idea strikes him. Since he knows what's going to happen in the future, he could be like a prophet of sorts. He could prevent the world's downfall by reforming the 5 great sins, all for the sake of his peaceful, noble life. It shouldn't be impossible considering the 5 great sins are just kids right now, but with no powers of his own, how on earth is he going to pull this off? 2 months later, our main character had successfully rescued some orphans from the human testing center. When I say our MC managed to, I really mean his knight. Evan was the one who did the rescuing. Evan reports that he's left the management of the orphanage in the hands of a girl named Yusha. Our MC nods in agreement, realizing he made the right choice in picking Evan for this job, as he's quite skilled at handling such tasks. However, since our MC struggles to show emotions on his face like a typical person, Evan is left puzzled, wondering if what he just heard was a compliment, as he can't quite read his expression. To clarify, our MC tries to force a smile, and Evan thinks he'll never get used to his young master's face. He recalls how Alan used to wear his emotions on his sleeve, whether he was gloomy or happy, but now it just feels strange. Even our MC suspects that his possession of Alan's body might have only affected his face, as he can't seem to smile properly. Moving on, Evan decides to accept his young master's praise, and our MC explains that Evan is a rare gem in the world of psychedelia because he has remained honest and loyal despite all the betrayals around him. That's why he hired him as soon as he found him. Back to the report, Evan mentions that the reason our MC sent him to rescue the children from the testing center was to save Yusha, which our MC confirms. Evan adds that he can see why. Even with his experience as a mercenary, he can tell Yusha is no ordinary child. She's strong enough that he can't understand why she just accepted being locked up. Evan questions why our MC didn't bring her to the estate, as keeping her at the orphanage doesn't seem beneficial. Our MC agrees, but internally he thinks that it might look like he's neglecting her instead of utilizing her potential. However, leaving her at the orphanage is part of his plan. Yusha Blusha is a non-human who makes a pact with an otherworldly being to gain its powers, ultimately becoming the embodiment of the wrath of the 5 great sins and causing the deaths of countless people. However, thanks to our hero, that grim future is averted, and he wants her to grow up in peace. He believes he has finally dealt with one of the 4 remaining landmine disasters, but since he can't share this with Evan, he decides to come up with an excuse. Acting all mysterious, he tells Evan that the time isn't right yet. Evan, curious as always, wonders what he means, but as is often the case, side characters have their own narratives. He assures our hero that he understands. Our main character urges him to keep this under wraps, and to support the orphanage with enough funds for them to live peacefully. He also hands Evan a handwritten letter, asking him to pass it to Yusha. When Evan inquires about the letter's importance, our hero brushes it off, saying it's just a way to check in on her. He explains that he wants to reassure her since she's been through so much. Evan promises to deliver the letter and quickly sets off on his horse. Meanwhile, our main character reflects on whether the letter will truly comfort her, but he figures it's worth a shot. The real intention behind the letter is to include some quotes he's heard repeatedly in the game. During a pivotal moment when Yudia was wreaking havoc on the kingdom, the Archbishop mentioned a specific line about how a certain spell could help befriend a non-human like Yudia, who had already succumbed to the sin of wrath. The line was something like casting a spell of agony from the dark, with the brightness of belonging to the fall. Honestly, he doesn't quite grasp what it means, but it seemed to resonate with Yudia for a brief moment. As the story unfolds, Yudia ends up killing the Archbishop. It's not that the spell didn't work, it was just too late, and her attempts to calm down failed, resulting in the destruction of the entire kingdom. Now our main character believes it should work this time, since it's not too late. He figures that since he's dealt with wrath, it's time to move on to his next target. Yet, he still finds it absurd to think about becoming friends with a monster just because of a quote. But who knows, maybe it'll actually work, especially since the sins seem to worship some mysterious god or otherworldly being. He struggles to understand what those kids are thinking. They come off as fanatics. Meanwhile, we finally see Yusha reading the letter our MC sent her, and she's not exactly thrilled. Just looking at her, Evan can't help but notice the sheer amount of mana radiating from her. It's unbelievable. According to Evan, this little girl is the strangest person he's ever met. It's as if she has no emotions at all. She asks Evan to confirm if our MC was the one who sent the letter, and he nods. In an instant, Yusha unleashes her mana like a crazed yender who just caught her partner cheating. She's upset that our MC didn't invite her to the estate, and Evan is about to feel the full force of her rage. Manifesting mana in solid form, like Yusha is doing now, is something only those who have reached the Master Realm can achieve. Evan recalls our MC saying it wasn't the right time for him to meet with her yet, and surprisingly that excuse seems to work. Yusha calms down, interpreting the quote our boy included in the letter as a promise only her master would understand. Meanwhile, Evan is left bewildered, wondering what on earth is happening in front of him. Yusha, fully in her Yandere mode, insists that she understands what our boy meant. This girl, who honestly resembles Sheltir Bloodfallen from Overlord, embodies the sin of wrath as the daughter of monsters, the bloody Queen Yusha. Meanwhile, back to our main character. He thinks he's managed to stretch his luxurious lifespan a bit. And honestly, he's not wrong. As he drifts off to sleep, he even imagines the bright moon in the sky cheering him on. He promises himself to work hard on rescuing the next child. We get this adorable little bonus panel of him placing a primrose flower on his bed before he dozes off. He thinks all he really wants is to live a long, peaceful, luxurious life. Is that too much to ask? In the Astria Kingdom, there's a tradition of placing primrose flowers on wounds or old scars for the deceased during funerals, which basically means our boy is in deep trouble. The next day, our MC finds himself in the library, where books are literally falling on his head, as if they're trying to kick his illiterate ass out. He's currently on the hunt for clues about the third sin. Let's call them landmines. But the whole process is giving him a headache. Evan reports that they've successfully rescued the second child, all thanks to our boy's intel on where to find her. Our MC asks if Evan made sure they treated the child extra kindly, to which Evan confirms, explaining that after saving her from the illegal slave market, they were very gentle with her. But before he can finish, someone kicks the library door open, sending them both flying. This brute turns out to be Tonio, the second son of the county polio. He starts bullying our MC, asking how an illiterate guy like him is even holding a book. I love our MC's bratty eyes. He's completely unfazed. As Tonio ramps up the pressure demanding answers, our MC thinks this guy is such a nuisance. He even wonders how the original Alan would handle this kind of treatment. Realistically, he would love to fight back, but that just seems like too much hassle. So he decides to play it low-key. He tells Tonio that since it looks like he wants to use the library, he'll be taking his leave. Thinking he's completely dominated RMC, Tonio steps on his head with a mocking grin. But just then, a sharp knife whizzes by, embedding itself in the wall, as another brute enters, telling both Tonio and RMC that they're being too loud. This new arrival is Leo Palladio, the first son of the county. As these two idiots start squabbling, RMC seizes the opportunity to crawl away. He reflects that in the game, the Palladio County had quickly vanished after the first sub-quest, but he didn't realize their power and influence were much greater than he thought. Basically, what's really happening here is that these scummy brothers are fighting over who will become the family head. The first son is a major player in the underworld, known as the Prostitute King, while the second son runs a large-scale drug cartel, earning him the title of the Drug King. As these two buffoons bicker, our MC realizes he can't afford to get involved with either of them if he wants to maintain his sweet, luxurious life. I absolutely adore this MC. He literally crawled away while his two brothers were at each other's throats, and Evan just followed him like it was the most normal thing in the world. As Evan fixes his hair for him, our MC vows to live a happy life as a weak and incompetent bastard child. A little while later, Evan shares that the second child they rescued didn't seem quite like a typical kid either. It's making Evan question his entire reality. Looking at this foolish master, he thinks about how hard it must be for him to keep it together around his brothers, while our main character just grumbles about being tired. Moving on, Evan wonders why he sent the second child to the orphanage again. Our MC, however, knows that this second child is anything but ordinary. In fact, he's on a whole different level. Within the United Kingdom, which is made up of several nations, the central one is the Callian Kingdom, where the second child they saved from the illegal slave market hails from. This child, or more accurately, the second boss of psychedelia, is known as Deus Macallion. After being sold into slavery and mistreated, he ended up embodying one of the 5 sins, the sin of sloth. He then went on to wreak havoc on the kingdom in the most horrific ways imaginable. This part of the story left many players shocked by psychedelia's cruelty. Despite his title as the Sin of Sloth, he was actually known for being incredibly hardworking, always repaying debts and wrongs multiple times over. That's why our MC stressed to Evan the importance of treating Deus with utmost kindness. The graphics of Deus's fights were so intense that our MC still trembles just thinking about them. Trying to keep an air of mystery, he answers Evan's question by saying that he sent the second child to the orphanage because the time isn't right yet. Evan just nods along saying he expected as much. He then asks if the letter he sent to Udia this time was about the second child, to which our MC confirms, but in reality, we get a glimpse at what's really in that letter. He's just venting to Udia about how his older brothers are picking on him. Honestly, this guy cracks me up. I really love this MC. Anyway, he claims in the letter that he told Udia to look after the second child, who's feeling a bit under the weather. And in a way, he's not wrong. Deus could definitely use some time to chill and heal. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Deus is trying to keep to himself, hiding his body covered in cuts. Udia approaches him and asks if he's broken. She wonders if the Black Goat organization is responsible for his injuries, and just hearing that name gets a reaction out of Deus. In her Yandere mode, Udia starts talking about how even though he's broken, he's still been chosen. She congratulates him for being selected by the Blue Moon, which is what they call our MC. It seems like Udia is setting up an organization with our MC at the helm, and she promises Deus that if he stays loyal and follows their orders, he'll get his chance for revenge. Hearing this, something stirs within Deus, and his own magic, or maybe the authority of sloth, like in ReZero, starts to manifest. With that settled, Yudia decides to write her first reply to our letter, and for some reason she's way too excited about it. Meanwhile, back at the estate, our main character was still deep in the library, searching for clues about how to track down the third child. Just then, Evan burst through the door, announcing that they were in big trouble. He reported that the second young master of the Palacio household was dead. Our MC, who had been expecting this news, was still taken aback by how quickly it all unfolded. The funeral was held almost immediately, but what really shocked everyone was the complete lack of mourning. Even their father showed up with 2 prostitutes by his side. Like, seriously? RMC was a bit stunned. Bringing drugs and women to your own son's funeral is crossing a major line. He always knew this family was messed up, but this was next level. He mused that psychedelia really is a dark fantasy genre, indeed. Anyway, moving on. RMC thought that Tonio's accidental fall seemed a bit off compared to what he remembered. In the game, Leo had cried desperately after killing his brother, shouting about how he was now the sole heir of the Count Palladio. But now, here was Leo, literally smirking in front of the body, like, come on, at least try to hide your emotions a little. Regardless, this wasn't really RMC's problem. His main focus was still on resolving the issue with the 5 deadly sins. Fast forward a year, and the successor problem was sorted out, with Leo taking over Tonio's drug business. The county became a lot more peaceful. In the meantime, Yusha and RMC had become pen pals, exchanging letters more frequently. RMC figured that keeping in touch with her would be beneficial down the line, while Yusha filled him in on how the other kids were doing, which made him smirk since they were growing up nicely. She also sent over their monthly sponsorship list, which caught RMC's attention because it seemed to be growing quite a bit. He wondered what was going on, but Evan, who was busy stuffing his face, pointed out that while it was unusual, it was a good thing nonetheless. Evan then finally shared the news that our boy had been searching for. The information they needed had been found. They even got a call from the Information Guild about it, which was a huge relief for our main character, since it was all about the ancient book concerning the third child. This meant he could finally uncover that little landmine, and it brought him so much joy. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, and our MC was enjoying a peaceful evening. Meanwhile, on the other side of the land, at a drug distribution site called Margot, some of Leo's henchmen were boasting about how generous the eldest member of the Palacio family was, always showering them with big rewards. Thanks to that, their drug organization had grown to a few hundred members, but little did they know, that number was about to take a nosedive. What they witnessed next was pure horror. Most of their members were literally turning on themselves, screaming that they couldn't control their bodies. It was as if they were being puppeteered, leading them to take their own lives. The culprits behind this chaos were none other than our MC's children, Yusha and Deus. Using his thread magic, Deus wiped them out single-handedly. Turning to Yusha, he asked if there was really any point in killing these fools. Yusha, however, questioned whether Deus felt any pity for them. He clarified that he didn't, especially since these guys exploited human lives to produce drugs. He felt this had nothing to do with his quest for revenge. But Yusha, unleashing her magic, explained that this was essential for their master's return. They were essentially clearing out the trash in the county, so that when our MC stepped up as the heir, things would be easier for him. With a majestic smile, she wondered how they could let the place look so shabby for his arrival. Deus responded that he understood. But honestly, what did he really understand? They were treating our MC like Ains from Overlord and Sid from Eminence in Shadow. Using her magic, Yusha etched a symbol into the ground, and as they soared away in style, she declared that everything would unfold according to his will. A massive surge of mana erupted, leaving a crescent moon shape behind, and Yusha added that they were the blue moon, destined to become his sword. Now that's some serious Eminence in Shadow vibes. It's been 2 years since our main character and Yusha became pen pals, and during that time, Evan has been working tirelessly to track down the other sins. Looking completely worn out, he finally collapses on the grass, where our boy's magic seems to revive him. Evan shares the good news that they've successfully found the 5th child and sent them to the orphanage, which really hits our MC in the feels. Even though he can't show it on his face, he explains that over the past 2 years he's managed to save all 3 remaining children, meaning he's rescued all 5 sins. To celebrate Evan's hard work, he treats him to some delicious cake and goodies, while also mentioning that finding the sin of greed, the 3rd child, was a bit of a challenge. After making Evan put in some extra hours using his game knowledge, everything worked out in the end. He praises Evan for a job well done, and now that the mission is complete, he can finally take a breather. Evan asks if this means all the orphanage duties are wrapped up, and our MC confirms it. Evan breathes a sigh of relief, but then questions why our MC doesn't seem happier about their achievement. Our boy insists he's thrilled, but Evan points out that he doesn't look at it at all. Our MC tries to defend himself, saying he's smiling right now. And we even get a close-up of his mouth, only to realize this guy isn't smiling at all. You wouldn't even call it a smirk. But Evan, used to this, just rolls with it. As they move on, our MC reflects on how he didn't expect things to go so smoothly. After all, the bosses of psychedelia became the 5 great sins due to their terrible pasts. Even though they're in the past before becoming the sins, the odds of saving them all before they went through those awful experiences were pretty slim. He was also worried he'd be too late, and they'd be too broken to save. He asks Evan how things are going at the orphanage, and Evan hands him a letter, saying everything is running smoothly as usual. The kids, who once seemed like broken dolls, have really brightened up. Our main character points out that if that's true, they wouldn't need to hire a separate caretaker. That said, he didn't expect Yusha to do such a great job with the orphanage. He wonders if her background has something to do with it. In the game, she was meant to feel a sentimental connection to the place. This leads him to remark on how nice Yusha is in her own way, but Evan quickly urges him to read the letter for any important updates. In the letter, Yusha gives our boy a rundown of how the kids are doing, mentioning that they're growing well and he doesn't need to worry about them, especially Deus, who was a bit of a special case. She reassures him that all the children are improving, which brings a rare warm smile to our main character's face. He expresses that he's just happy they're all growing up well. Deep down, he wonders if the environment is the key factor in an orphanage, since these kids are thriving. Anyway, Evan asks the big question, when does he plan to meet these kids? He always says the time will come, but our main character privately admits he has no intention of meeting them anytime soon. He thinks it would be nice to be close to them, but the kids don't exactly have personalities he's eager to be around. And honestly, he's not wrong. Having witnessed their cruelty in the game, we can't blame him. Maybe it's because of how brutal their transformation into sins was. Regardless, he thinks it shouldn't be too bad now that he managed to rescue them before those events unfolded. Yet he still feels a twinge of fear just thinking about it. So he tells Evan that he's thinking about meeting the kids in maybe 5 years. Regardless, our main character realizes that what he really needs right now is the ability to protect himself in this grim, dark fantasy world. And the answer lies in magic. As he practices, he feels lucky that the body he's in has some magical talent. Then Evan asks if he's heard of an organization called the Blue Moon. RMC admits he hasn't, and Evan explains that Blue Moon is a group that's recently started hunting down criminal organizations. RMC thinks that if they're cleaning up the trash, that's a good thing, but deep down he wonders why he's never heard of them in the game. He's sure they won't last long. But Evan teasingly points out that RMC should be really scared, since Blue Moon's whole thing is taking out nobles, which sends a chill down his spine. I love the chibi panels of RMC, as he tells Evan that just in case he should sleep next to his room from now on. Meanwhile, back at the orphanage, Yusha is holding the Blue Moon weekly report meeting. She does some acrobatics in the air, while saying that those idiots couldn't even figure out who she really was. She even claims she gave them a chance, saying she'd let them live if they could guess the color of her eyes. But those weaklings couldn't even get that right. Then we meet the sin of greed, Rina, who despite her name, is more calm and elegant. She reports that all the corpses were melted down, leaving no evidence behind. The sin of misophobia, Raiden, reports that he also wrapped things up in the south, taking care of the illegal human testing grounds and turning those Avalon bastards who were causing trouble into minced meat. These kids are seriously scary, I tell you. Anyway, the scariest of them all, Yusha praises them for a job well done, talking about how everything will go according to his will, She emphasizes that they all exist for the sake of the Great Moon. This secret organization worships the Great Moon, the Blue Moon, who just so happens to be our main character. Suddenly, Deus reports a problem, which makes Yusha question what could possibly be wrong when everything seems perfect under his command. These fools are treating our MC like some kind of deity. Deus explains that the head of Avalon is the eldest son of the Palatio Count family, where their lord resides. He claims to have found a dangerous written order while cleaning up the south. It turns out that the eldest son Leo is targeting our MC. Naturally, Yusha can't let this slide. She unleashes an intense, murderous aura that sends the other kids cowering in fear. The letter reveals that Leo's plan is to slowly poison our boy after eliminating their father, which sends Yusha into a furious rage. Fast forward 2 years, RMC's father, Count Polito, has passed away, and just like before, his funeral is held almost immediately. RMC explains that while the official cause of death is heart failure, it's clear he died from an overdose. Meanwhile, at the funeral, Leo gets news that the Blue Moon has struck one of his facilities. Seriously, couldn't they have waited until after the funeral? Leo keeps asking if everyone was wiped out again. Our main character, who's just casually eavesdropping, realizes that his brother is becoming increasingly cautious about the Blue Moon. As the Count's funeral wraps up without a single tear shed, our MC decides he doesn't want to get tangled up in all this drama and quietly slips away, just as his brother shoots him a planning glare. When Evan asks what our MC plans to do next, since it looks like that jerk of a brother is on track to become the new Count, our MC is already one step ahead. He's been packing his bags and tells Evan to do the same. The plan? To run away from this mess. Evan questions whether he really intends to flee, and our MC clarifies that it's not a complete getaway. They're just heading downtown to lay low for a bit. When Evan asks if he means the town of Rod Mill, our guy confirms it. He's been eyeing Rod Mill for a while now, and it's a small town in the south of Palia, making it the perfect hideout. Plus, he's timed it well since Leo has been giving him some seriously unsettling looks. Once they arrive in Rod Mill, our MC actually starts enjoying life, whipping up some delicious-looking toast while Evan just goes along with everything like it's the most normal thing ever. But 3 days later, their peaceful existence is shattered when our MC is forced to return home for his brother's funeral. He can't believe he's back so soon. According to the game, Leo wasn't supposed to die yet. The cause of the death is a stab through the heart, which leaves our MC wondering who could have done such a thing. He tries to ask one of the servants about the details, but they scream in horror, as if they're about to meet their end. It's not just that. All the servants are acting strangely, overly apologetic, and treating him like he's some kind of mafia boss. He can't help but wonder what's going on with these people. As he's making his way out, Evan catches up to him, and he asks him if he found out why the servants are acting so weird. Evan claims he did, and playfully wonders if our MC was the one who made the Avalon drug organization disappear overnight. Turns out Leo was the head of that organization, and now that he's gone, it seems like the whole thing vanished without a trace. We then flash back to the day our main character set off for Rod Mill. Inside the carriage, Evan was curious, asking why he's heading to a small town like Rod Mill instead of a bustling city. Our MC explains that a city is simply not an option for him. Rod Mill is his ultimate destination, the endgame in all his plans. He shares that his mission is straightforward: save the 5 great sins from their misfortunes to prevent the world from crumbling. Plus, since Rod Mill isn't part of the original story and has a villa, it's the ideal spot for him. A villa is a separate estate, making it the perfect hideaway for a laid-back noble like him, where he can relax and do absolutely nothing. Honestly, I share that dream. If you like this video, it would really help me out with my bills and give me some much-needed downtime. Anyway, our MC gets serious when answering Evan's question, insisting that everything he does has a purpose. But after hearing the same old responses for a while, Evan calls him out, pointing out that he always uses those same lines when he wants to dodge a question. He tells our MC that he can't fool him anymore. Our MC is taken aback by how Evan has seen through his little lies. As their banter continues, Leo, who's been watching our MC drive away, contemplates whether he should kill him or not. According to Leo, it doesn't really matter if our MC lives or dies. He had already planned to poison him. But now that our MC has decided to leave for the border, Leo feels he has no reason to go through with it. Yet for some inexplicable reason, he still feels the urge to eliminate him. He instructs one of his henchmen, Alman, to follow the carriage. Alman, however, asks if that means he's supposed to kill the MC. This question leaves Leo baffled. Alman has never questioned him before, no matter what orders he received. He usually just follows them without a word, so for him to speak up like this feels a bit odd. Leo reminds Alman that his job is to obey him, but before he can finish, Alman lunges at him, stabbing him right through the heart. Leo, in shock, shouts out why Alman would betray him like this, but Alman simply replies that he enjoys playing war. We soon discover that Alman is actually part of the Blue Moon organization, and his real name is hidden. He explains that they've been taught a creed by Blue Moon. Since the Blue Moon is essentially RMC's sword, it makes sense for them to act according to his wishes. However, if anyone dares to threaten the Great Blue Moon, RMC, they're allowed to take matters into their own hands, meaning they can eliminate the threat. Hidden reveals he's been waiting for Leo to give the order to kill their lord, and he can't believe it took 2 years for that to happen. Leo tries to argue that his subordinates won't let Hidden live, but Hidden counters that, with Leo's death, the entire organization will be wiped off the continent forever. Looking at Leo's lifeless body, Hidden can't help but comment on how unfortunate this all is. If Leo hadn't tried to kill their great master, he might have lived a few more months or even years. Meanwhile, in the present, our MC is enjoying his dream life in the small town of Rodmill. He wakes up whenever he wants and shares delicious meals with Evan, living the life of a true noble. But as fate would have it, his peaceful existence is shattered when he receives a letter. The letter requested that he step up as the next head of the family. Just like that, his carefree life came to an end, a mere 4 days after it began, forcing him to return to the palatial estate. However, things fell off. The maids and other staff were acting strangely around him. He couldn't help but wonder what was behind their odd behavior. Then Evan teasingly asked him when he had become the shadow leader, leaving him completely baffled. It dawned on him that all this fuss was due to the bizarre circumstances surrounding his brother's death, which had led to his current predicament. In his usual dramatic fashion, he started sobbing, pleading with Evan to help him understand why he was seen as the villain in this story. Evan pointed out that since he stood to gain the most from the situation, it was only natural for people to suspect he had a hand in his brother's murder. Right after he left the estate, Leo was killed, and our main character had the perfect alibi to step into the role of the next count. Realizing how his plan to avoid this mess had backfired, he felt a wave of frustration. But Evan tried to lift his spirits, explaining that with the drug organization, Avalon out of the picture, and his brother gone, he wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore. Evan jokingly added that in short, our main character was now the new shadow leader of the county, who had supposedly orchestrated the assassination of a swordmaster. Despite Leo's scummy reputation, he was still regarded as a swordmaster. Our main character began to ponder where to even begin, as he couldn't think of any organization capable of taking out a key figure in the underworld so swiftly. He asked Evan about the group he had heard hunted other organizations, to which Evan wondered if he meant the Blue Moon. Our main character speculated whether the Blue Moon could be behind his brother's death and the downfall of Avalon. However, Evan quickly clears things up, saying that according to the Information Guild, the Blue Moon isn't to blame. Instead of leaving behind bodies, the Blue Moon is known for marking the moon itself. That's just how it operates. But it's rumored that all the members of Avalon met their end with a sword through the heart. Evan can't help but tease our MC, joking that the road to hell has been opened. But putting jokes aside, our MC reflects on his game knowledge, realizing there shouldn't be any organization called the Blue Moon, which means they can't be responsible for this mess. But if it's not them, then who could it be? As he tries to piece everything together, the scene shifts to the orphanage where Yusha is holding a meeting with the other great sins. She asks if everything went smoothly, and Rina, the sin of greed, confirms that she left no traces behind. Seol Rome, the sin of pride, adds that there was no one left alive on her end, just corpses. Diaz chimes in, boasting that he took out all 486 soldiers of Avalon. His magic is quite something, like a beautiful butterfly tangled in spider webs. Then there's Raiden, the sin of misophobia, who also confirms that he cut down all the bad guys in half. Yusha praises them for their work, but she's a pretty intimidating child. There are whispers that she's actually over 1,000 years old in the novel, but who really knows? That's how Avalon, the most notorious drug organization in the world that brought doom to the Asteria Kingdom, was wiped out in just 5 days. But suddenly, Radon mentions that he doesn't think the cleanup was flawless. When Yusha asks what he means, Radon explains that he stumbled upon some intriguing documents linked to the nobles associated with Avalon, particularly the Altea Doctum, which has some deep ties. Hearing this, Yusha's magic starts to flare up, and she tells the others they already know what she's about to say. It's time to wipe them out. Radon promises to handle it quietly. Moving on, Udasai then asks if the Information Guild is clean and whether they have any ties to Avalon. Rina confirms this, explaining that the guild matter is being dealt with separately from the other issue concerning the Blue Moon. Deiji Unce, on the other hand, claims that all the guilds behave similarly, referring to it as the Hell's Word crafted by the Swordmaster. Hearing this, Rina inquires if she should keep tabs on our MC's movements, to which Udasai agrees, emphasizing that this entire situation must not reach that person's ears. She insists she has mentioned this multiple times, and they should all be aware of it. When she refers to that person, she essentially means our MC. Degius points out that since that person's family targeted them first, the order to eliminate them wasn't sanctioned by them. Upon hearing this, Udea starts to panic. In her opinion, all their actions must be driven by a direct order from our MC. She claims they are essentially swords, and a sword should never think for itself. She declares to the other sins that from this moment on, all members of the Blue Moon must only act on orders, and they should take this decree seriously. This leaves the other sins feeling a bit uneasy, as Udea adds that they must never disappoint that person, no matter what. Inwardly, Deus thinks he can't quite grasp any of this. For someone as powerful as Udea to feel anxiety and restlessness, simply because she's discovered by that person seems excessive, but nevertheless, he tells Udea that he understands. They conclude their meetings by chanting that everything is for the Great Moon, which is essentially afraid how the Shadow Garden from Eminence and Shadow wraps up their meetings. Meanwhile, back to our MC, he finds himself buried in paperwork as the new Count of Palacio. He explains that after his brother's funeral, he faced a full month of endless duties, and he feels overwhelmed by them. He starts shedding some tears, lamenting that he just wants to loaf around and do nothing. This fool even claims that's what it means to be a noble. Anyway, he couldn't help but think that even though he had made quite a few enemies, his brother Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years from now. But with the strange circumstances surrounding all his brother's deaths, everything shifted, and now all the family responsibilities had landed on him as the sole heir. Just then a few ministers from the county walked in, bringing even more paperwork for him to deal with. He closed his eyes and started to wonder why everyone in the county suddenly seemed to be working so hard. Back when his father was still the count, they would slack off and treat work like a rainy school day. He waved at them, signaling to drop the paperwork on his desk. But in the minister's eyes, he was radiating a deathly aura. They began to worry if they had somehow angered him, with some even vowing to work even harder to avoid any consequences. He was a secret mastermind who would eliminate anyone who displeased him. But having been a former workhorse himself, he wasn't handling all this pressure very well. He wondered if it would be possible to get the ministers to do all the work for him. Later that night, Evan was a bit shocked to find out that our boy had reached the 2nd tier in magic after just 2 years of self-study in poison craft, which meant he was quite talented and not shy about showing it. The little rascal was casting spells all over the house. Normally, it takes about 4 to 5 years of instruction to reach the 2nd tier in magic, and it often requires a natural talent as well. Our protagonist agreed that his magical talent was pretty decent. Deep down, though, he knows he's been practicing hard for self-defense because something just doesn't feel right. To wield magic effectively for protection, one must have perfect control over their mana, just like he's managing to do at this moment. Still, he can't help but wonder what good his magic is if it's only half-baked. He insists he's tried every type of magic this fantasy world offers, and at first it was thrilling. He thought that mastering magic would mean he'd have nothing to fear, but now it feels more like he's scrambling to learn magic just to save his own skin. That's when the harsh reality hits him. His mana capacity is alarmingly small. Without enough mana, there's no magic, and that spells trouble, possibly even death. As he wallows in his predicament, we discover that innate mana capacity is akin to an athlete's natural weight class. While some are born with extraordinary talent, our main character is stuck with a minuscule mana pool, and no amount of training will change that. Yet he clings to a glimmer of hope. If all else fails, there's a way to fix it. Just then, Evan interrupts his thoughts, announcing that his invitation to the ball has finally arrived, leaving our present puzzled about what he's talking about. The scene shifts a few days later to the grand ball, where our main character makes his entrance in some truly majestic attire. The fit is impressive, but being the introverted guy he is, he claims to be already worn out, even though he just got there. This party, let's call it what it is your typical aristocratic gathering in the southern part of the Asteria Kingdom. It's basically a meet and greet for nobles, and since our MC is about to be sworn in as a count soon, he really has to show up. He gets into serious mode thinking this is his golden opportunity to network with the nobility, which is crucial for his ultimate goal of living a peaceful life. But soon enough, he realizes that making those connections is going to be a lot tougher than he thought, as everyone seems to be fleeing from him in sheer terror. He even tries waving at them, but they literally just run away. Evan, his friend, tries to lift his spirits, telling him not to be down, but our guy insists he's not upset at all, even if his expression says otherwise. He tells Evan he expected this reaction and vows to try harder as he heads out on his own. However, our protagonist seems a bit clueless about what's really happening. He thinks the other nobles are looking down on him for being a low-class noble without any backing, and he's not entirely wrong. The current Palacio household is indeed filled with troublemakers, like his two older brothers. Picking up a wine glass, he assistants himself that he didn't come to the ball without a plan, and is determined to unlock the social skills he's been secretly honing. He starts talking aloud about the wine's unique aroma in an attempt to spark a conversation, but due to a mysterious condition that makes it hard for him to show emotions on his face, he ends up looking quite villainous, especially when he tries to smile. He tells a lady he'd love to have some bottles at home, all the while thinking his smile is perfect, but in her eyes he resembles a demon king, and she bolts, saying she'll tell her father to prepare them right away. To the other nobles, it looks like our protagonist just extorted and blackmailed the poor lady into giving him a limited edition regional wine. What a mess. Evan tries to comfort him, while our protagonist insists that the lady must have just been shy. Later, we find him sulking in a corner while Evan is happily munching on food, teasing him about how his list of gifts has grown. It turns out the wine incident wasn't a one-off. Every time he tries to talk to someone, they think he's trying to blackmail them, handing him things like a pinch of citrus tea and more. He can't shake the thought that Palacio has become way more notorious than he ever imagined. With rumors swirling about him having killed his two brothers, he's basically turned into a figure of fear and dread. Feeling down, he tells Evan he needs some fresh air. As he steps outside, a certain red-haired beauty catches his eye. While he's out there, he can't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Suddenly, a soft voice calls out to him from behind, asking if he has a moment. He turns around, puzzled about where the voice came from since he doesn't see anyone. Looking down, he finally spots a cute young girl who introduces herself as Loria, the third daughter of Duke Altia. Hearing the name Altia, our MC recognizes it from the game, and he explains that the Altia family was one of the three major shadow players in the Psychedelia game, known as the Northern Troublemakers. This realization stung a bit, as he had hoped someone normal had actually spoken to him. He also wondered why he couldn't recall this girl at all, had she not appeared in the game. Loria, however, was straightforward, asking him to lend her his strength for protection, as she will be facing an assassination attempt soon. Loria explains that she's in serious trouble and needs our protagonist's help, but when he looks at her, it's clear he's unsure. You see, Loria has been living under the protection of her father's mistress. But now that her father's health has taken a turn for the worse, she fears her older sisters might try to eliminate her. Our main character can't help but think this situation mirrors his own past with his brothers. As he gazes at her, it dawns on him that the reason he didn't recognize Loria from the game is that she must have already been dead and never made an appearance. Loria, looking as adorable as ever, pleads for his assistance, claiming that with his abilities he could really make a difference. but our protagonist firmly turns her down. She insists she's not coming to him empty-handed. If he saves her, she promises to share half of the Altia family fortune. Still, he walks away, feeling a twinge of sympathy for her. Deep down, he knows he can barely manage his own magic, so it's best not to give her any false hope. Despite wanting to help, he's not the all-powerful figure everyone thinks he is. As he heads into the party room, he can't shake the image of Loria's sad face, which makes him feel guilty. He wishes her luck before stepping inside. Meanwhile, Deus and Ron, who have been observing from a distance, start to wonder what their next move should be, since one of the Altia family members has approached their master. Deus ponders whether he should report this to the Red Moon, a code name for Yusha. But Rin reassures him that everything's okay because according to their intel, Loria is the only member of Altia not tangled up with Avalon. This means she's pretty much safe since Raiden, the one with the sin of mesophobia, has gone off to deal with the rest of her family. They've decided that the rest of the Altia household is going to be wiped out, all under the orders of the Red Moon. Rin adds that their main mission right now is to ensure their master doesn't catch wind of anything related to the Avalon situation. Meanwhile, our clueless main character is left wondering why everyone seems to be avoiding him. Does he have some sort of invisible barrier, keeping people at bay? Just then the red-haired woman from earlier approaches him, and it genuinely brings a smile to his face. Well, more of an inward smile since he can't believe someone actually acknowledged him. He thinks maybe this time he'll actually manage to socialize. But as he turns around, he realizes she's not just any ordinary woman. She's another shadow player. Looking at her, he recalls seeing her face in the game, and it hits him that no normal person would approach him first unless they were trouble. He greets her, calling her Lady Zenonia, which surprises her. How does he know her name? Our protagonist explains that she's quite famous in her own right. In the Asteria Kingdom, there are 3 prominent shadow player families: the Altia in the north, the Palladio in the east, and the Zenonia in the west. This stunning curvy lady is introduced as the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia, Kalaya. She asks him if she's really that well known, and he explains that while Kalaya Palladio runs a gang, the Zenonia family operates more like a clever criminal syndicate. Just thinking about it makes him shudder. He insists that what he really needs are some solid connections to help him maintain his peaceful, noble life. For the sake of that easy life he's always dreamed of, he believes he must steer clear of this curvy, stunning woman who seems like trouble. With a respectful bow, he compliments her beauty, almost as if he's trying to say goodbye, but she stops him, saying she wants to have a word with him about something. Deep down, he wishes she would just leave him alone. With a smile, she tells him he's just as the rumors say, and adds that she looks forward to seeing him again, leaving him completely dumbfounded. As she walks away, he wonders what that could mean, sensing it's some kind of code, but he shakes it off. Meanwhile, Renee and Deus, who have been watching from a distance, are pleased that their mission to keep our protagonist in the dark is going smoothly. However, Deus points out a problem. Looking out the window where our protagonist is standing, they spot someone who has been tailing him for a while, and they quickly rush out to deal with the threat. The next day, our protagonist and Evan find themselves in a forest, with Evan asking if he's really sure this is the canyon he's been searching for. Evan notes that it's midday, the sun is shining, but the canyon is oddly dark. Our boy, however, isn't paying much attention. He's ecstatic that he's finally found his true objective. As they venture inside, he jokes that if this place turns out to be empty like the others, he might actually cry. But as he looks at the symbols on the walls, he realizes this is the real deal. He explains that in the game, finding this place was a breeze. Truthfully, he admits that the only reason he traveled all the way to the south under the guise of attending the ball was to discover this labyrinth right here. The labyrinth, it's called the Labyrinth of Whispers, and if you can crack all the riddles in its 8 rooms, you'll earn a powerful artifact as a reward, exactly what he's after. He claims to have memorized all the routes and puzzles this labyrinth has to offer. Finally, he arrives at a massive door, and as he gazes at it, he confesses that seeing the labyrinth entrance in person is breathtaking. It feels so much more real than it did in the game. In the game, he tackled this labyrinth countless times. Evan, on the other hand, asks how our protagonist even knew a place like this existed. Our boy, without thinking, replies that he's been here often, leaving Evan puzzled about what this guy is talking about. Realizing he might have slipped up, Our protagonist quickly backtracks, saying he was just kidding, and suggests they head inside. Once inside, they encounter some monsters and giant golem hands that could easily crush them like twigs. Evan wonders if these creatures are tied to the riddle, and if our boy gets the answer wrong, those giant hands will show no mercy. But our boy unfazed starts solving the riddle, leaving Evan to wonder how he can remain so calm in such a dire situation. Evan reflects that they've been together for 4 years now, yet he still doesn't understand him at all. Things like saving orphans, repaying random debts, helping free slaves, and even delivering seemingly pointless messages. Yeah, in Evan's eyes, our boy is a total weirdo. Still, watching him solve the riddles with ease makes Evan question how this is even possible. This guy has barely left the estate, yet he seems to know everything about this labyrinth. Regardless, Evan admits that the reason he keeps following this mysterious master of his is simple. Everything he does somehow leads to a good outcome. They finally make it inside, but our main character can't shake off the gruesome visuals of the game. He's feeling queasy, but as they step into a lavish room brimming with treasures and gold, his attention is immediately drawn to a hand statue adorned with multiple rings. He declares that their goal is the black ring, and insists they should grab it and get out fast. Meanwhile, Evan, who's busy stuffing his pockets with gold, questions why our protagonist is so fixated on the black ring, which looks like the least valuable of the bunch. Our hero explains that taking anything else could lead to trouble down the line. Deep down, he realizes he's finally got his hands on the ring that holds the oath of restraint. As they start to head back, our MC feels pretty pleased with himself, thinking that snagging the ring was a breeze thanks to his gaming knowledge. But Evan suddenly gets a bad vibe and points out that the rock piles they passed while entering the canyon are actually golems, and they seem to be stirring. Evan quickly gets into battle mode, feeling anxious about their situation. To him, these golems are total unknowns, making this a nightmare scenario. He thinks that if he can just get his young master out safely, he wouldn't mind sacrificing himself. But our protagonist steps up, telling Evan to stand down because he'll take care of the golems. As the golems prepare to attack, Evan urges him to find an escape route first. With the golems closing in, Evan shouts a warning, saying his second-tier magic won't be enough to handle them. But our MC stands tall, confidently invoking the Oath of Restraint, which activates the black ring. Suddenly, time seems to slow, and he finds himself in a different dimension. A voice introduces itself as a fragment inheriting the great will of Nyasila, instructing our protagonist to state the 2 restrictions he wishes to impose on himself. Our main character finds himself in a pretty intense situation. In the game, this part showed up as a choice window. But now, hearing this mysterious voice and seeing a gigantic face looming in the dark cosmic expanse is a bit overwhelming. The Oath of Restraint is an absorption-type artifact, and as the name suggests, it lets the user impose limitations on themselves in exchange for power. However, the sheer force of the voice makes our MC tremble a bit. The voice urges him to declare his first restraint, and with a hand sign, he states that he will always perform the hand signs of Babylonia when casting magic. The voice then asks what he hopes to gain from this restriction, and our boy responds that he desires the ability to bend the laws of the world just a little more. The voice grants him this power. For his second restraint, our boy explains that he will strictly chant the words of Babylonia when using magic. When the voice inquires about his desire behind this restriction, he boldly claims he wants even greater power to defy the laws of the world, which momentarily surprises the mysterious entity. Our protagonist starts to worry that he might have messed something up, especially since the entity paused. He even mimicked the exact skill icon from the game just to be safe. By choosing both the hand signs and the word restrictions, he believes he can achieve the highest possible magic attack power. Thanks to all his repeated gameplay, he has memorized every combination used in the game, so this should work. Finally, the entity speaks again, confirming that his restraint has been granted. It expresses gratitude to the human who has remembered all the gestures and mysteries of the forgotten god. Our protagonist is puzzled by what the entity means, but he quickly notices that the ring is being absorbed, indicating that all the restrictions were successfully applied. The entity concludes by telling our MC that it will always be watching over him as the one who will inherit its will, whatever that means. Just then, time seems to start flowing again, and it's right as the golems launch their attack on our MC. Evan tries to reach him, but our hero unfazed begins to cast his magic. He can't help but chuckle at his own spell, thinking how in the game it looked so impressive and powerful, but now thanks to his meager mana, it's just so small. He gathers it in his hand, reflecting that no matter how hard he pushes himself, this will always be his limit. But hey, it's time to test out his new Restraint's Eye. Have to say his magic looks majestic. Maybe it's the pose anyway. He starts chanting, with the first word being refraction, which makes his magic begin to take shape. Then comes repulsion, causing it to swell in size, transforming into a stunning blue light of electric magic. The magic ball is massive. Using hand signs, he adds another chant for direction, and finally he unleashes it. The way he does it is so grand, reminiscent of how Gojo releases his hollow purple. The sheer power of our boy's magic leaves Evan in shock, as the lightning obliterates all the golems, turning them to dust. In the aftermath, Evan can hardly believe his eyes, wondering what on earth just happened. He asks our protagonist if he's been hiding his power all this time, but our boy shakes his head. Evan explains that in all his 15 years as a mercenary, he's never seen anything like that. He questions if our MC is really sure that was second-tier magic, to which our boy confirms. Though deep down, he's just as confused about what transpired. He admits that this wasn't at all like it was in the game. In the game's turn-based battle system of psychedelia, magic could be enhanced each turn through hand signs or incantations. This time, he boosted the chain lightning magic with all 4 incantations and hand signs for a total of 5 turns. In other words, he simply used magic settings for a large-scale lightning spell. However, because of his restrained oath, he had to use the hand signs and incantations for all his magic, meaning his spells were enhanced time and again. Even so, our protagonist felt that the second-tier magic he used was a bit over the top, and the results exceeded his expectations, which caught him off guard. Meanwhile, Evan was just relieved they made it out, and as he sat down, he remarked that watching the battle was way more exhausting than actually fighting. He asked our protagonist who had created such an unpleasant canyon. After a moment of thought, our hero realized that the Maze of Whispers had a different name in the game. The map layout and strategy guide were posted on the game's community website, and it was called the Maze of Paladon. He told Evan that a guy named Paladon was the one behind it, but Evan was too worn out to even process that information. I really love this duo. Our protagonist grabbed Evan, saying they needed to head back home because he had something in mind to do once they got there. This made Evan question why his usually lazy master was suddenly so motivated today. Our main character explained that every time he picked a hand sign that matched the spell's attribute he was casting, the power increased. If he chose the right incantation, the magic properties would get enhanced, which is how the game mechanics were designed to work. The only difference was that, unlike in the game where the visuals remained the same and only the numbers went up, in this world the spell actually changed shape with each incantation. But he suddenly wonders if this only applies to him, especially since he's particularly skilled at controlling mana. He decides he'll need to test it out once his mana has recovered, but for now he's just relieved that everything turned out okay. As they prepare to leave on their horses, we see Run, who has been quietly following our main character, watching the whole scene unfold. She quickly makes her way to the canyon, and upon arriving she spots the runes on the wall and realizes she can actually read them. She explains that these are the glyphs of the Alenef Empire, which essentially tell the story of the era of the Forgotten Outer Gods. Renee's eyes catch another glyph hidden in a corner, which she translates as, "For my friend who shall be left alone," from the coward Palin. As she examines the glyphs more closely, a smile spreads across her face. She shares that the one who halted the invasion of the dark creatures, standing victorious against the Alalkalaka that devoured the hearts of the citizens, was none other than the brilliant emperor known as Palin the Great. The reason she knows all this is that she inherited all this knowledge at birth, thanks to the ancient library she received. She briefly recalls our main character mentioning that Palin was the one who built the canyon, but as usual, she misinterprets the situation. She thinks that she knew our MC was special, since someone like the bloody Queen Udia follows him, which is a pretty big deal. Having someone like Udia as a subordinate is something you'd only read about in history books. However, she continues to believe that our MC is actually a friend of Palin, completely misreading the glyphs he saw. Moreover, she claims that the phrase our boy used while casting magic doesn't exist anywhere in the ancient library, which only strengthens her belief that our MC is truly remarkable. Blushing, she admits that Yudia was right all along, feeling a bit embarrassed about having followed orders without question all this time. And just like that, our boy ends up with another yandere in his harem. Kind of a strange thing to say since they're basically just kids, but I digress. Anyway, Rina spots Deus arriving and immediately asks if he got any info from the fool who was tailing their great master. Deus responds that the idiot is dead, and he didn't even do it. It's more like the guy's head just twisted in midair. Rina insists they need to report this back to Yudia for processing, and Deus agrees, so they head out. Meanwhile, in Zenonia County, Lady Kalia is sipping her tea, pondering how our main character is just as the rumors say. She notes his chilling, emotionless expression and those abyss-like eyes. It bothers her that he called her famous. Count Zenonia is indeed strong and well-known, but for our protagonist to label her as famous despite not being involved in social activities is quite intriguing. What's really going on here is that Kalia is the true mastermind, using black magic to control her father the Count, making her the real head of the family. The fact that our boy called her famous makes her think he might know something about her secret, which terrifies her since no one is aware that she's turned her father into a puppet. She recalls how our protagonist mentioned there are too many eyes on them, which she misinterprets as him having discovered the person she had following him. Now that's a classic case of misunderstanding, like something out of an Eminence in Shadow scenario. Suddenly, Kalia gets a call from one of her servants who says there's a problem. Well, she asks what's going on, and the servant insists that it's better for her to see it for herself. When she heads to her room, she discovers that the person she had following our main character is dead. The servant explains that since the seal on the body didn't activate, it means he didn't spill any secrets. But Kalia quickly points out that the person who killed her man must have intentionally brought him to her room. Frustrated, she starts questioning how our main character figured out she was the one who sent this guy to tail him. And just like that, our poor MC gets misunderstood once again. And just like that, we've come to the end of today's story. So, now that we've seen everything, here's my honest take. What really makes this story stand out to me isn't just the transformation from 0 to 100. It's the kind of transformation we're watching. Because this main character never actually chases power, status, or control. He doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to rule. He doesn't even want recognition. All he wants is something incredibly simple. A quiet, safe, comfortable life where nothing goes wrong. And that's exactly why everything around him escalates. At the start, he's not acting out of ambition. He's acting out of fear. He knows the future. He knows how brutal it gets. And every choice he makes is about avoiding the worst possible outcome. That alone already sets him apart from most isekai or fantasy protagonists. Instead of asking, how strong can I become? He keeps asking, how long can I survive without drawing attention? Ironically, that mindset makes him far more dangerous than someone who actively seeks power. One of the strongest themes in this story, in my opinion, is misinterpretation. The MC constantly tries to do the minimum. He saves the children quietly, keeps his distance, avoids confrontation, refuses to explain himself. But everyone around him interprets that restraint as absolute confidence, calculated control, godlike foresight. The five sins don't follow him because he commands them. They follow him because they fill the silence with their own meaning. And that's honestly unsettling. What I really like is that the story never treats this as a joke for too long. At first, the misunderstandings are funny. But as things escalate, you realize how dangerous this dynamic actually is. The MC isn't in control of the narrative anymore. He's reacting to it. And the moment people start worshiping an idea of you instead of who you really are, you lose the ability to stop them. Another thing I appreciate a lot is how power is handled. Yes, he becomes stronger. Yes, he gains access to dangerous abilities. But the story makes it very clear that his body has limits. His mana is restricted. Every power-up comes with conditions. Even the oath system reinforces this idea. Power isn't free, it's negotiated. So this 0 to 100 transformation isn't about raw strength. It's about efficiency, preparation, and restraint. That makes the progression feel earned instead of cheap. There's also a strong irony running through the entire story. The MC does everything he can to avoid politics, nobility, and power struggles. Yet by doing that, he slowly becomes a feared noble, a shadow leader, a symbol, not because he planned it, but because people need someone to project their fear and hope onto. In trying to live quietly, he becomes louder than anyone else. Personally, I think this is what elevates the story beyond a standard power fantasy. It's not asking, what if I became overpowered? It's asking, what if I knew the future and still couldn't control how people react to me? And that's a much more interesting and honestly more realistic question. By the end, the MC hasn't won in the traditional sense. He's alive, he's prepared, but he's also trapped in a role he never wanted. And that lingering tension is what sticks with me the most. So yeah, for me, this story works because it's not about domination or wish fulfillment. It's about fear, restraint, and unintended consequences. And the fact that the MC remains fundamentally human, flawed, cautious, and tired, is exactly why his transformation feels meaningful. That's my take.